Well, I think I'll go ahead and kick things off tonight um, with just a quick hello and a welcome to all. I am sending wishes tonight for safety and peace to everyone. Really, I'm saying it tonight, but of course, I mean always. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Allison Green Myers. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the program director here at the Highlights Foundation, and tonight I'm calling in from northeastern Pennsylvania on the traditional and contemporary lands of the Lenape people. Um, with me tonight, I do have some members of our Highlights Foundation team who are also very excited to talk scholarships. I have Alex Viasante with me, and Molly Chow, and of course, George Brown. And we'll be hearing from all of them very soon. But just a quick note, since we're on a gather together to our attendees, this is a webinar. And so I need to tell you all, we cannot see you. We cannot hear your video. We can see what you place in the chat. That's our communication with you this evening. We can certainly look into the Q&A feature if you have a question, but we can see all of those hellos in the chat. We will be adding closed captioning to tonight's recording so that when we post this recording, there will be captions running throughout the evening. Please, if you are here with us live, keep on putting those hellos in the chat. We love to see them. And then I do remind you, put any questions that you have about scholarships or anything else Highlights Foundation related in the Q&A feature. And we'll get to just as many of those questions as we possibly can tonight. In these spaces, in the chat, here on Zoom together, really anywhere we come together as the Highlights Foundation, we ask for your respectful engagement. As you know, at the Highlights Foundation, we really strive for a safe and inclusive environment. And so we ask you to join us tonight with no hate, no harm, and no harassment of any kind. I love saying we need to be mindful about what we say because, of course, how we treat one another is really reflected in the work that we do for children. So let's take good care of one another. We'll model that, and we'll look for ways that we can support children and stories and storytellers all along the way. Our mission here at the Highlights Foundation is to positively impact children by amplifying the voices of storytellers who inform, educate, and inspire children to become their best selves. So as we work each day to bring this mission to life, I have to say there's some special excitement right now, really propelling us through our mission because we're launching this new scholarship initiative at the Highlights Foundation, and it has us all just abuzz. We're so happy that you're here to spend some time talking about it tonight. I want to say that really at its heart, this new initiative, it really exemplifies our core value in investing in the immense potential and impact of a storyteller in a child's life. We are reaching out to writers and illustrators and educators and more and saying your stories matter so much. Let us support you in getting those stories into kids' hands. I've shared with some friends this week, this new scholarship initiative is really just the culmination of decades of work. We have, of course, the care that our founder, Kemp Brown, has instilled in every piece of the Highlights Foundation. We have former and current students helping us to mold this new initiative, former and current financial supporters, our dedicated faculty, and of course, you all know them, our steadfast Highlights Foundation team behind it all. So tonight, as I keep alluding to, we'll be talking about this new process for applying for scholarships, but also our plans for awarding these scholarships to personal retreaters, online courses, and in-person workshops. And we're going to spend just about 99.9% of our time tonight looking forward. We're going to go forward on how this new process works. But if you'll give me just, a little bit of time to look back, I do want to say, historically, the Highlights Foundation has always offered scholarships to the programs. The once solo Highlights Foundation conference, the Chautauqua Writers Week, then adding those scholarships to our in-person workshops, and of course, in 2020, providing financial support for our online courses. We've offered full tuition scholarships, we've offered partial tuition, and in part of the conversation, we often talk about payment plans. And George kind of started embarrassingly by holding up a book. I have firsthand experience on the impact that these scholarships really do have on one's dreams and one's life, because, really without this scholarship at the Highlights Foundation and without the payment plans that they provided, I certainly wouldn't have the book that he held up, and I certainly wouldn't be here as part of the Highlights family if it wasn't for that. So one of the things that we did recently was we sent out a survey to people who have taken courses with us. And maybe if you're here in the chat, you're adding information, you received the questions from us about that survey. We just wanted to see how people were doing. But of course, one of the questions was, if you received a scholarship, how did receiving that scholarship impact you? And we weren't necessarily talking about a specific project. How did it impact that project? Again, we're talking about investing in storytellers. And so the question was, how did it impact you? And we had just an overwhelming number of responses. And because we couldn't have just a ton of people on the call with us tonight, Alex and I thought, well, maybe we'll just share a few. And if you'll allow us, we'd love to read just a few out loud while we share them. Alex, is it okay if I start with that first one?
Yeah. Okay. Although I wish we could have had all of those people, because it would have been a party, but we had to be, a little conservative and just pick a few.
That's right. So we have 4 here. How did receiving a scholarship impact you? Here's this first one. Again, as I was talking historically, that Chautauqua Writers Week, which is where I received a scholarship as well. This one is from a writer. Maybe we could play Guess Who after. The Highlights Foundation launched my writing career when I was chosen as the recipient of the 1993 John Crane Memorial Scholarship to attend the Writers' Workshop at Chautauqua. I signed my first book contract shortly after that event, and within a year, I signed 8 more contracts. The Highlights Foundation changed my life, and I'm forever thankful.
Oh, I love that so much. I mean, it just speaks to how a scholarship to the Highlights Foundation can be formative in a lot of different times of somebody's career, right? The second one is, let's see, the fact that the Highlights Foundation puts its money where your values are by offering scholarships and making opportunities available even to those who don't meet their initial goals says everything about your commitment to building people and practitioners. I feel infinitely more confident in my process and my potential because of the way that the Highlights Foundation shows up as a resource and a coach. Thank you.
I love this one. And I again, talking about, making sure we get the most into this session tonight. But the first part of this quote was actually about coming after a series of rejections. And it was talking about kind of applying and filling out the application and not being able to say, I've met all my writing goals. My book is out and it's selling and these things are happening. And then the recognition that came after too was saying, I recognized that actually wasn't my goal. Publication wasn't my goal. My goal is to create the very best book that I can for kids. And of course, that's what we want to see in someone coming in to a workshop as well. Here's another one. It's so lovely. It's hard to overstate how much the Highlights Foundation has changed my life for the better. I received a scholarship when I was at a huge crossroads in my writing life, wondering if I could or should ever write fiction again. The mentorship, knowledge, and training that I received from the Highlights Foundation is what I still lean on 3 years later when I find myself questioning my calling.
Oh my gosh, I feel that. How many of us haven't been at those crossroads again and again, or have questioned, like, do I have what it takes? Should I be doing this? Is this a waste of time? So knowing that a Highlights Foundation scholarship, not only in the moment sustains that person, but continues to sustain in the memory of, like, you got this, you are worthy, and to carry that forward. That's so great. I'm gonna get emotional. Okay.
And I probably shouldn't say this, but two of the quotes that are up here, I won't say which one, but two of the quotes that are up here are actually from current faculty, which I love. I love knowing
we'll
that
guess
too,
later.
and that one was.
Okay. I was blessed to have received a Highlights Foundation scholarship to attend this retreat, and I want to once again express my sincerest gratitude to you all for this incredible support. This was a life-changing experience. I come to Highlights feeling completely unsure if my voice mattered. I left Highlights with the absolute assurance that it does. Thank you so very much. That's a seismic shift.
Yeah, and then that one, that was from one of the very first times. I see Leslie Newman on the call, so I'm just going to.
I know, I saw her too.
Leslie, a shout out. But Leslie, that was from someone from one of your courses. It was from the first time that we ran Writing the Rainbow, and again, this quote goes on to just say that that line really talking about, I wondered if my voice mattered, and feeling supported both financially and with the faculty who is in, a part of those courses, I think makes such a difference. And I had to share a few more. I think, we'll hold up books, we'll see in the back in the acknowledgements, people thanking the Highlights Foundation, and it's the whole Highlights Foundation. That's what I love about the scholarships, because it encompasses the whole organization, that belief.
Yeah, absolutely. These testimonials are amazing. They're only like a small, as we said before, a small portion of many more testimonials. And I'm thinking a little bit about, like, we could, if I had my way, we could just sit here doing this all night long and talking about all these awesome stories of people, because it's really heartwarming. But we are here to talk about a new initiative. So can you tell me, because this is a new initiative, but as you say, we've had scholarships for a long time. We have a long history of scholarships and obviously helping people. What isn't changing in this new initiative? I'm putting you on the spot.
I remember doing, all the trainings every new school year, doing professional development. And it was like, you would hear the term change, and then it would be, we'd be wondering what exactly is happening. And I always like when there's your change really is because we're taking what has worked in the past and we're adding to it the new knowledge that we have. And I really believe that the changes that we're making with the new scholarship initiative are just that. We are continuing to examine the needs of the children's book community, future readers, future storytellers, and we're saying, let's hold on to what's worked in the past, those quotes, right? Clearly, that support is working. Now, how are we moving forward in the future? And so I would say, large in part, if you're someone on the call tonight or you're someone watching the recording, the application itself is pretty much the same. We're still asking for a submission of one of the following: a picture book manuscript, a mocked up illustrated book, sometimes referred to as a dummy, a digital portfolio, or a project proposal. Maybe you don't have something that we would think of as a children's book in the works, but you're working on some kind of research that's based in children's literature. And so you might put a project proposal together or something. And then you could also, or do about 10 pages from a longer piece of fiction or nonfiction. So we have this submission that goes with part of the application, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, we're saying that this is something that's in progress. You're reaching out and saying, I'd like to come and work on this. And so even if you're looking at the application window and you're saying, my goodness, the application window goes until March 13th and I need to write a book from scratch between now and March 13th, that's certainly not what we're asking, right? We're really looking for, what are you working on? Let's get a taste of your voice. Let's get a taste of your vision in this. And then we do ask for some narrative responses. I think narratives are such a great way to gather information. People who love collecting data might not agree with me, though. I like to read the story behind the story, right? And I think that that's really important when it comes to the scholarship application. And so we do look for these narrative responses, things like your goals, your needs. What is your interest in creating stories for children or teens? Or, as I said, the research behind young adult novels in contemporary settings. Like, what is your interest in this field? And then really one of the other pieces that is optional, because not everyone will select this, but we do ask for a narrative about your connection to a named scholarship. And George is really going to talk a lot more about the named scholarship, these special scholarships where available. So I would say the narratives and the submission that I mentioned, you know, those are the same. We've asked for those pieces, but those two things together help us consider the two criteria for scholarships really at the forefront, and that's talent, that promise, and seriousness of purpose. It isn't my I thought about this last night and I'm going to go forward with it. This morning, we've put time, we've put effort, we've put thought into it. And I have something, I feel so connected to writing for children, and I'm moving forward. And then that question that I said is, it depends on if someone is applying for one of the special scholarships. It's called a connection. We're asking for you to look at that connection as well as your goals in writing for children. That really helps us to understand the details that help us provide better support, more support to traditionally underrepresented voices in children's books. And so those pieces, so we have the submission, we have these narratives, we collect some biographical information, and then we do collect some financial information, and that gives us the third component, really, which is financial need. So we really do lay out these three criteria, and they've been the same three criteria for a very, very long time.
Right. So those are the things that are not changing. The seriousness of purpose. We really want people to have that kind of like, this is really where I want to go. This is really what I want to do. This is a passion. Talent, and that goes to that submission that you were talking about. A connection in the case of a named scholarship, but again, George is going to talk about that a little bit. And then financial need. Another thing that we had talked about earlier that is not changing is that in the application process is how thoughtfully the applications are reviewed, and how that's always happened and how it will continue to happen. So can you talk a little bit about the review process?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. I think too, that was a big question for our team, really. I think that became a big question. We've had, traditionally, we've had rolling applications, and they were connected to a workshop. And so, Leslie is on the call. So Writing the Rainbow comes up, and we have a member of our scholarship committee review some of the applications for that scholarship, and then the faculty will take a look at it, and then the scholarship would be applied to that specific workshop. And so now we're looking at a slightly different process, because now we're saying we have a scholarship window, and what we want to put forward most of all is this support in the storyteller, regardless of which course they choose to join us for in the coming year, in the coming months, you know. So for us, it was, okay, we've had a scholarship committee and our faculty who throughout a given program year reviews a few scholarships. And now we're saying we want them all. Bring them on, you know, bring
March 13th.
Right. And so we still have this wonderful supportive network from our faculty, our Highlights Foundation friends who are volunteering to serve on this committee. And that way, just as we had talked about, we have people who are really committed to looking at that talent, seriousness of purpose, and financial need. And right now we have about 24 people who will be working together to offer those initial views of the applications as they come in. We're not quite sure what to expect when it comes to how many applications we might get during this window, but we've had some experience recently with calls for applications. Our Muslim Storyteller Fellowship has launched. It launched, you know, in the past July, and that had a call for applications. We had 300 applications. We put together a application review committee. They reviewed an overwhelming number of applications, and then we had a smaller committee to kind of talk about some of the scholarships there before granting the fellowship. And that's really a model that we're looking at moving forward with this large scholarship review. So we will still have an independent committee who will work to thoughtfully review those applications as they come in. Most of the applications are viewed multiple times, so you might have one person weigh in with comments and then have a second person weigh in with comments. And then, you know, we'll be able to come together and connect an application with one of the scholarships that we're offering right now during this window. I can't, I probably can't find the right words to say what we're asking of the committee because of those narrative responses. There's so much to view that the submission is important. I don't want to say that the submission is not important. It's showing that promise. It's showing that you're showing up to your work and your writing and you have a vision. But those narrative responses are really so important, and the committee itself puts so much value in looking at each of them.
And part of that thoughtfulness, which though that part is changing a little bit, because as you said, the submission window is, instead of rolling, it's this, I guess, say it again, March 13th. But the people that we're engaging in this process, more people, but they're still going to give that same care and thoughtfulness and looking at those nuances of the seriousness of purpose and the submission and all those pieces. None of that care and quality goes away. So criteria the same, thoughtfulness of review the same. What's new?
Oh, that's right. I was going to only spend 99 points on what's new.
Here to keep you honest.
Somehow it's 7:25 and I've been doing other things. I'm so sorry. And I know that George is behind his camera right now, but I can feel him smiling because you said new. And George loves a good change, especially when there's a lot of thought behind it. So I'll summarize a little and then I'm going to ask him to kind of come on it and share too, because I know he'll want to talk about what's new. Let's see, what's new. So the first thing, I mean, this I have talked about. I remember to talk about this, but we are putting a focus on the special scholarships that we offer. And in so many cases, these scholarships are named after one of our great supporters, you know, like the Floyd Cooper Scholarship, which not only was supported by Floyd, but now honors his incredible legacy. It feels so special to be able to say, let's take time. We're going to pause and we're going to shine a light on Floyd Cooper's scholarship. It means a lot. We want to thank and honor and highlight these many scholarships with this new initiative in a way that maybe we haven't done to that degree in the past, and we're hoping that this way allows us to do it. And I'll stop and just give a huge shout out to our marketing team, because they're really the ones, Christina Osajuglu, Kat Galliano, Bobby Combs, Molly Chow, who you saw earlier does the graphics, because they really led us to this. They said, hey, how do we make more of a celebration from the announcement of a scholarship to all the way up to when that recipient's name gets announced as well? Yeah. What can we do to make this feel more celebratory? Because we all feel it, you know, behind the scenes, we're like, we can't wait. And so now it's saying, let's turn that forward facing and say, let's celebrate this. Let's celebrate our supporters, the people who have brought these amazing scholarships together, and let's celebrate those storytellers. And so
that next generation,
right? I mean, it's great, and they were right, and I'm sure they love hearing that even more. But certainly, our marketing team is wonderful. They really helped us too. I was talking a little bit about the Muslim Storyteller Fellowship. If we think about working with the Brown Bookshelf on Amplify Black Stories, even the Diversity Fellowship, these were other places where we looked for a call for applications all at one time, and then we were able to celebrate. And that's what we hope to do with this call for applications. So that's one. Another change, I think, is that it is a true application window. We're going to try and be steadfast to giving ourselves some parameters around this. We want to commit $75,000 to this scholarship window. We want to say, let's get our scholarships out and into the hands of storytellers so they can make decisions about what workshops they want to go to, what are the things that they want to do. We want to invest in them up front in the year so that when the offering comes up, they're ready to go to it. They're not thinking, well, I'm going to fill out the application and then I'm going to wait and find out if I'm approved on the scholarship application, and then I'm going to get into the course. No, we're going to invest up front, and then you'll go into the course. And so I think that brings me to one of the changes we're so super excited about.
This is it. This is the one I'm super excited about.
Of all of them, you're like, oh, you look excited about everything. Okay, I
know, it's just
we're very we've added scholarship funds to the personal retreats, and that seems like, well, of course, but really, as I said before, the process was selecting your workshop, applying for the workshop and the scholarship, and attending the workshop. And now we're saying, investing in you, the storyteller, you might want to take a personal retreat. So we had some funding in that, like from the PJ Library, which, you were able to apply for a personal retreat. Renee Watson's scholarship is really specific to taking time for that personal retreat. And a personal retreat is just that. It's a writer, an illustrator, a researcher, a scholar, applying for a scholarship and using the funds toward coming on their own private getaway. They're selecting the dates, they're coming to the retreat center, they're wandering, they're working on their own independent projects, and then they're leaving with what they wanted to accomplish with them. I'm thrilled that there are funds reserved for this creative time. I really am. I know you feel the same.
I really do. Because sometimes you really need different things at different times of your creative journey. And sometimes that is just to be alone with your work. Yeah. So I think one other thing that I might have missed this in the chat, but I think Molly was going to drop a link to the press release if she hasn't already done that in the chat. It would be great if you could, Molly, I know you can hear me, drop a link to the press release that has all that good information in there into the chat.
Can I add one more thing that is tangentially related to this? I hope that's okay.
Yes, okay.
You can. So it's not this is actually not a change, but I feel like it's important to shout out that it's not a change because of all the things that we're talking about. So the whole novel scholarships, we've been talking about, okay, so a scholarship doesn't have to be connected to a specific workshop. It can be, you know, your personal retreat, online, in person. But the whole novel really is just as it sounds for those who don't know exactly about our whole novel workshops. It's a chance for a writer to have their entire novel read, reflected upon, and then discussed by a caring reader. We have whole novel offerings online and on campus, but the whole novel has its own application process with it. And so for us, it seemed important, just let's leave that as is. Let's leave it as is, because you are always filling out an application for that workshop. So if you want to apply for scholarship or some kind of funding support for that specific workshop, you can do that with the application window specifically to that workshop. So again, you asked about what is new, even though that's
staying the same.
Scholarship.
Yeah, that's a change because it's staying the same.
Right. So my big new ones that I wanted to talk about really are highlighting those special scholarships all at once in the year and making a huge celebration of that right off the bat, knowing that we have a window to look at a majority of our applications. So, you know, like I said, other scholarships might be granted, but $75,000 committed to that window. And then also the personal retreats. I think those would be my big new ones, but I know I'm sure George could weigh in on
should we let George talk now? Do you think we should let George talk?
I think that's probably the best thing. I'll
Otherwise.
stop. Hi, George.
Oh my goodness. Hi. Oh, what fun. So hi, everybody. My name's George Brown. I am the Executive Director of the Highlights Foundation, and I too am coming to you from Honesdale, Pennsylvania, the traditional lands of the Lenape people. Allison asked me to share just a few of our scholarships, and I got so excited I wasn't quite sure where to go. So I'm going to go through really quick and show you a whole bunch of scholarships in a hurry. Let's see. Alex, am I showing the right thing?
Yes, you are. It looks great.
Oh, wonderful. So let's get started. Where's the clicker? There we go, with the Patricia Lee Gouche Scholarship for middle grade and young adult novelists. Patty, as we like to call her, has been with the Highlights Foundation for 30 plus years, teaching all the way back at the early days of the Chautauqua Writers Workshop. And Patty continues to come and teach on campus and online. This past year, a number of her students, I see Charlie, you're here this evening, thank you for representing. A number of Patty's students came together and helped fund the Patty Lee Gouche Scholarship so that we will have this scholarship available in perpetuity. And we are so thrilled to have Patty's name associated with the Highlights Foundation Scholarship Program. Dick Bell is the reason the Highlights Foundation exists. When my father, Kent Brown, hosted the first Chautauqua Writers Workshop, he was pitching to the board of the Highlights Company that they do it again, and Dick Bell stood up and said, yes, let's do it again. And so thank you, Dick, for making that all happen. We do have a couple of scholarships that come with a cabin in the woods. The Jack Myers Scholarship for science writers, Uncle Jack, who was a big part of the Highlights family. There's a scholarship and a cabin in his name on our campus. Nikki Grimes, we just finished the Nikki Grimes Cottage maybe like 2 or 3 days before the big awards season, and it was so fun to watch Nikki get her awards this past year. So Nikki's scholarship is for Black and Afro-Indigenous women, writers, and poets. And of course, Allison mentioned the Floyd Cooper Scholarship for an illustrator of color or an Indigenous illustrator. We're so excited about Floyd's scholarship this year. And then Steve Light and his bride, Christine, have created a scholarship to support an illustrator to attend summer camp in illustration and be able to have a chance to stay in the Steve Light cottage, where the artwork is part of inspiration he received while at the Highlights Foundation. And then Jane Yolen and Heidi E.Y. Stemple Scholarship. We just recently did a birthday fundraiser for Jane for her 83rd birthday 2 weeks ago, and had some wonderful support for Jane and Heidi's scholarship. We have a number of scholarships in honor of friends, the James Cross Giblin Scholarship and the Jerome Wiseman Scholarship. Jerry was the staff illustrator at Highlights magazine for 40 plus years. Lee Bennett Hopkins, a great poet and friend for sure. Stuart Kirkfield. I see Vivian is here, and Vivian's friends put together a scholarship in Stuart's name upon his passing, and Vivian continues to support this scholarship and has a number of friends who were just helping on Vivian's birthday to make some more funds available for that special scholarship. Here's a fun one, Kay Yoder scholarship. So Kay, we celebrated her 100th birthday at the Highlights Foundation this fall. There's a scholarship in her name for history writers. Rebecca Dotlich has been with the Highlights Foundation for many years and has a poetry writing scholarship. And a dear friend, Deborah Weingarten, used to love to come and be with us in personal retreat, and friends of hers, I remember Deborah with that special scholarship. There are friends who are paying it forward. There's the Wheeler Whole Novel Workshop. This one is specific to the whole novel for an unpublished middle grade writer, 50 years of age or older, to be a part of the whole novel workshop that Allison was speaking of. The Transgender Scholarship for picture book storytellers for a transgender person pursuing the craft of picture books. And Renee Watson's scholarship for a week-long independent writing retreat for a Black woman writer. Looking forward to being able to award that scholarship. The Community Connection Scholarship, a student of the Highlights Foundation wanted to pay it forward, and she set this up for a pre-published middle grade or young adult novelist to be able to attend a Highlights Foundation program. And Christine and Kenneth Taylor Butler Scholarship. Christine has been a longtime friend of the Highlights Foundation and an early member of that scholarship committee that was reviewing scholarship applications back in the early days. And then a few scholarships that are done in partnership. We have the Diverse Verse Scholarship, which is newly created this year for writers identifying historically marginalized or underrepresented groups and wish to attend a poetry or a novels in verse workshop. The PJ Library Scholarship, which nurtures illustrators and authors of Jewish-themed books for children, and the I2 Arts Collective Scholarship for Black writers identifying as women. The Muslim Storytellers Fellowship, we do not have that application open. Currently, we are in the middle of that program, which is just wonderful. Here you'll see our 16 fellows of the Muslim Storytellers Fellowship. That is a partnership with the Doris Duke Foundation for Islamic Art. And the Kidlet Women Scholarship, a lovely podcast. If you haven't listened to the Kidlet Women podcast, please take a look at that. And the Brown Bookshelf Scholarship, we've done some great things with the Brown Bookshelf, including our Amplify Black Stories program, as well as our special memorial tribute to Floyd Cooper in January. We're thrilled to be able to partner with the Brown Bookshelf on this program as well. A few more scholarships highlighting our commitment to equity and inclusion: the Latinx Storyteller Scholarship, the Kidlet Pride Scholarship, the Jewish Writer Illustrator of Color Scholarship, the Indigenous Storyteller Scholarship. A big shout out to Tracy Sorrell, who helped raise close to $2,000 just over the last 2 weeks to help fund the Indigenous Storyteller Scholarship. Thank you, Tracy, for that. Diversify Science Scholarship for illustrators. This is very specific for an Indigenous, Black, or person of color interested in science and nature illustration, specifically for working towards their illustration in science and nature themes. Disability representation in children's books, and the Anti-Bias Book Bearer Scholarship in support of our Essential Conversations workshops. Also, we have an Asian American and Asian and Pacific Islander Storyteller Scholarship. And finally, a general scholarship for everything else. I did see there was a question in the chat that said, how do I know which scholarship to apply for? So there is that chart. When you look at our website, and you can read up on these scholarships and see if one feels like a good match, or you can just choose general scholarship for sure. Allison, Alex, I just ran through lots of scholarships in a hurry. A quick shout out to everyone who's on this call with us that has either received a scholarship, applied for a scholarship, or donated to make a scholarship possible. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And Molly, thank
you.
you. Molly placed the link in the chat one more time that has that list. George was just talking about a chart. The chart has hyperlinks on it so that when you click on a scholarship, you can read more about it. You can often, if it's a scholarship named after, an author, an illustrator, it might tell you more about them, more about their career. And so you can find out all sorts of information there. Even within the application itself, we put a hyperlink to that page specifically so that if you're filling out your application and you say, oh, wait, what was the name of the scholarship I wanted to apply for? You can go directly to that scholarship and you can find out more about it. There are so many amazing questions. Alex and I, when we were
furiously
behind the
typing,
screen, we were typing, trying to answer as many as we could, but we didn't get to all of them. So we're going to try and go through as many questions as we can together tonight and still be very respectful of people's time. If we don't have an opportunity to get through all of the questions, we do have an additional Ask Me Anything on, this Friday coming up, where people can come in and ask any questions that they might have about the scholarships or really anything else Highlights Foundation related. I would say that the press release and the link that Molly keeps providing in the chat do give a lot of great information. We'll be posting this recording, so if there's something that you want to watch again or see clarified, that will also be up. George, did you have one more thing to add? Oh, Alex.
No, I was just going to say that Molly just put in the chat the link to the Ask Me Anything for a Friday so that you can have that information. Of course she did. She reads minds. So you can follow that to make sure that you can join Allison on Friday for just an open, ask any questions about scholarship or anything else.
There were two that I saw before I started speaking that I just wanted to address really quickly. One, Jamila asked about an expiration time frame, and this is set up for the program. The scholarship, you can use it anytime between the awarding in April through the 2022 or the 2023 season. And I'm sure if you call us and say, geez, I haven't yet been able to use it yet, we'll figure that out. And the other was a question about what we're asking about financial need. And so it's a soft question. We are asking for, I think it's adjusted gross income off of your tax form. We've had plenty of people not share that or say, I don't even file those taxes, et cetera. And then there is a text field that just asks for an explanation of your financial need. But there's no requirement for documentation or sharing your tax forms, et cetera.
Yeah, and maybe George, to follow up on that one, just for a little bit more clarity, there are several questions I think this would respond to. You're talking about that field about financial need, and we've kind of talked about those three criteria. And so someone has asked in the Q&A, what if I'm not showing, you know, is it a possibility that I could still receive a scholarship if I'm not showing financial need, or if it doesn't come across that I have a significant financial need?
Yeah, and so there are three criteria, right? There's the seriousness of purpose, fit, and then there's the financial need. So there is no cutoff that says if you make X or if your financial situation is Y. It's more of taking into account the whole application and looking at that with all of the other applications. So I have no straight answer for you other than just apply anyway and see how it all works out.
Yeah, I think that that's great. Apply anyway. If you think that this is for you, if you need support to get yourself to a program, to a personal retreat, we would love you to apply. I think that's at the forefront. I think there are 6 questions in here that ask the same thing. Alex, you can answer it. George, you can answer it. I'll be happy to answer it. Molly, if you want to come on and answer. All of them say, can I apply for more than one scholarship if I'm eligible for more than one of these named scholarships that you've just shown? I think.
So we ask that you only apply once, but if you are interested in applying, you can click the different buttons in the application. So you only have to fill out the application one time, but you might say, you know what, the Floyd Cooper Scholarship and the Steve Light Scholarship and the Jerome Weisman Scholarship all could apply to me. Click all of those buttons so that you can be a part of all of those processes.
Conversations. Yes, I think that that's great. That's wonderful. That's really helpful. Here's a question too. This is a question we often get just in general with workshops, but now specifically to scholarships. Is there an age limit, either on, you know, young or old? Is there an age limit on applying for a scholarship?
There is on the Wheeler Whole Novel Scholarship, where it's specific for a person 50 or older. And the whole point there was for someone coming to writing later in life. But otherwise, I think maybe 18 would be the younger age, where it's more about for adults pursuing the craft of writing and illustrating, as opposed to young adults and children. But otherwise, there are no other age constraints.
That's great. And then one of the questions was, could you please go over what a window means again? You keep using the term window for this scholarship drive. What exactly does that mean?
Well, so that's the amount of time that we will be actively accepting applications, and that is that cutoff of that window is March 13th. So that's when we were talking about that all those people that we have giving of their time to be on the scholarship committees and really look at all of the applications with thoughtfulness and nuance. That's all happening in those. Today's the 1st, 13 days if you count half of today.
Is there anything that you would add to that one, George?
It's amazing how many applications come in that last 24 hours. So, and I think we said it on there that it's midnight Eastern on the 13th, so that you don't have to ask or worry about the timing. If it's on the 13th, that's good, and we'll take that application.
That's a great point. And one of the other questions that came in has to do with the whole novel. So I'm glad we brought up that piece there. If someone really feels like the workshop that they want to apply to is the whole novel, should they still use this application window, or should they wait until the whole novel is announced and apply for that scholarship in that application if they're sure that that's the workshop that they'd like to use. What do you think?
Alex?
Well, so the whole novel is slightly different animal because it does have a sort of a process, a vetting process to make sure that you have a whole novel. So it doesn't actually apply to everyone. You have to sort of fit an extra special criteria in that one. So I think I would say that if that is the course that you want and that is where you want to apply, that you should apply for that. Because it's, I think I'm right. I don't know, Allison, if is that correct? Because I feel like that's why we're keeping it sort of as its own special thing.
Yeah. And so right now we have the online whole novel historical going on, and there is an active scholarship application that is part of that whole novel. Right after this window closes on the scholarships here, we'll be launching, we have 2 in-person whole novel workshops in the month of August. And so we'll be launching that and the scholarships that go along with that. And so I would say, if that's the workshop that you think you want to take this year, apply for that this year in conjunction with the whole novel workshop. If you're not sure, you could apply to the scholarships that we have during this scholarship window. And, then next year you could apply again and, apply for a whole novel. I think certainly getting, the information together, the scholarship applications, as I had mentioned before, are all very similar. So you would be asked to do the same thing. Let's go back in here and let's take a look at this. There's some really great questions, and they kind of have to do with a feeling about how lucky or how often or what percentage. This is a data question. I'm going to you, George. What percentage typically year over year of applicants receive scholarships?
I can't wait till we have a data person that will analyze all of our applications and send out a full report of that. I'll make a number up, and I think it's about 30%. I think we did almost 100 scholarships this year, and we had about 300 applicants. And so we'll see. This year, we have no idea. We know that we have, my math is what, 20, 40, 55 or 60 scholarships to award with all of the pieces that we're looking at. And we'll see how many applicants come in to know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
There is just a quick question. Teddy asked if you've received a scholarship previously or if you've been to the Highlights Foundation before. Yes, absolutely. Please apply again. Turns out the publishing process, the creating of story, is an ongoing process. It's not, we don't think of it as one and done. And so always looking at scholarship applications over and over again. And there was another question early on I saw about, are we running another diversity fellowship scholarship? And we do not currently have a diversity fellowship program like the one that we just completed. Hi, Pam. I'm so glad to see you here with us this evening. That diversity fellowship just ended a couple of months ago, actually. But we do not yet have another diversity fellowship lined up. But I do hope some of those special scholarships that you look at, you'll feel a connection to those for sure.
I don't want to take too much more time here. If we didn't answer a question, I am going to save this Q&A, and if we didn't answer them live, I'll try and answer them during the Ask Me Anything on Friday, and that way we can put the recordings together and we'll have a good list here of all of that information. But I do want to touch on 2 other questions that came in, and then we'll wrap things up. One of them has to do with on-campus workshops. For those of you who don't know, our on-campus retreat center, the retreat center itself, is in northeastern Pennsylvania. Both George and I mentioned we're on the traditional and contemporary Lenape lands. And I would say that we are both I mean, maybe George is 6 miles away from the retreat center. I think I'm 12 miles away from the retreat center. We're in the middle of a beautiful forest. But getting here it takes a little commitment to get out to this neck of the woods in Pennsylvania. And so one of the questions that I see here has to do with travel specifically. The question is about scholarships, and do scholarships include travel? George, I think that's something that's a part of the application. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there is a question there. Historically, travel has not been a part of our scholarship program. There are a couple of scholarships that maybe have travel stipends involved, but this year we decided to just ask the question flat out, like, is travel a necessity to make it work? And so we can take that into consideration when awarding the scholarships. So it's like a, yeah, we'll figure it out kind of a response.
That's great. And then I don't know how much, I love this question. I think it's a wonderful question. It says, oh, what do I do with the scholarship? And I think it's really important for us to end with this, because this is the big change that we're making. And so you're setting aside time over the next 2 weeks to fill out this application. You're looking at those special scholarships and seeing which scholarships, you're eligible for. Perhaps you're also, setting aside that the general scholarship funds. You've put all this time and effort into it. What do you do if you are awarded funds? What happens?
You get to play. I mean, if it's not a named scholarship and you get to look at the offerings that we have and really find, like we have, if you're not familiar with us yet, or you just haven't looked at everything that we offer right now, we have on campus, we have online, as we mentioned before, the personal retreats, whatever is going to speak the most to what you need in your creative journey right now. That's the fun part that you get to see. How can I grow, myself as a creator? What place is going to speak to me? So I think that's the super fun part.
Yeah, and I like that George also mentioned too, we are calling this our 2022 scholarship application window, but you don't have to only look for workshops that are popping up, within the next few months. You can continue to think about yourself, getting a project together that you really want to bring to a workshop is also really important. And so you could invest in that timeline and then come to a workshop as we're launching our next scholarship round. Like that's another piece, that you have this investment and you decide how you would like to put that toward a program online, on campus, or as you mentioned, that personal retreat, Alex. Again, I apologize. We answered 29 questions and we still have 13 open questions. But we will get to those 13 questions. I want to be respectful of this hour program. And so we will make sure that we answer those questions and get that on as an addendum to this. Any last few things to say to wrap up here? George or Alex, Molly?
I was just going to quickly say that you had mentioned the marketing team earlier and how we wanted to make this a celebration and make it sort of like just shine a spotlight on this whole sort of old but new initiative, sort of like a new way of doing what we've been doing really with a lot of joy for a long time. And I think hopefully one of the other good aspects of that, other than celebrating, will be that we reach other people that may not have heard of us. So spread the word and really get excited. Like, we're excited. You can tell we're excited. Get excited. Tell your community and yeah, just get excited.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'll close out with some thanks as well. And if you're still hanging on, bear with me for this quick thanks. I do want to say a thank you, a super shout out to our entire Highlights Foundation team who make everything possible. Events like this, our free programming, our, all of our, everything that happens. We have a wonderful team, but I'm going to give a special thanks tonight to our dear Jo Lloyd, who celebrated her retirement yesterday. She has been instrumental in the past 3 decades, making sure that the scholarship program happens, making sure that the workshops have, scholarship applications and people awarded. We are so grateful for everything that Jo has done for the Highlights Foundation, including our scholarship program, all of that support and service. So special thanks to her. Thanks, as George said, to everyone who has gathered tonight. Thank you for these awesome questions. We're going to answer more of them. We hope that if you're interested in applying for a scholarship, you just do it. Just do it. We'll answer the other questions. We love to answer questions. So if more questions come up, we'll answer them. And if you know someone, you say, this really fits, this is for them, please pass along this information. We want to reach as many storytellers as possible. That is the most important piece. So please stay in touch, and more than anything, be safe. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.